Okay, so we're going to do a spa update 3 years after purchase, and a couple of months ago we had to replace all of the headrests because they had just perished and looked pretty grotty. So 3 headrests, that was about 100 quid, I think, something like that. And we've also, well, we did ask for a rubber seal for this, but this is not a seal exactly. So anything we've been advised to do on this is to trim this off with a sharp knife. This decal is peeling off, so we've ordered a new decal. 25 quid for this decal. Complete and utter rip-off. A few days ago, well, probably a week ago, I noticed that the water level had dropped by quite a bit, even though we hadn't used the spa for a few days. Obviously you lose some from evaporation and splashing when it's actually being used. So it's quite clear that we've got a leak. So I've turned it off and let the water drop. That's where it dropped, the black line. Bit of tape I've put on there. That seemed to be where it wanted to stay at, but now it's dropped even further, and I've got to put another piece of tape onto the water level there, see if it goes down even more. I've taken all the sides off, and I've wiped a lot of it off now, because right down in that area there was a lot of sediment, a lot of water. We've checked pretty much all of the upper section and all of the upper pipes and bits and pieces, and can't see any problem. Right underneath there, you probably can't see it, but just, let's see if I can point out, yeah, just behind there, that sort of line is all sediment and water beyond it. So it's we've now got a major problem. That is the ozone layer. That is the ozone generator that was changed earlier on in the year that had leaked, but that's obviously not a problem. Noticed a little bit of residue on this pump as well. No idea where that's come from. So we're just a little over 3 years. So I've phoned up the spa company, which is Best Buys in Wellingborough, and said, look, £5,000 spa, I don't think we've had reasonable use out of it in just 3 years. And yeah, that's getting wet because of the rain today. I have to dry all that off. Anyway, so I said, I think we're going to have to ask you to come out and take a look at this. Of course, the other problem we've got here is, if I can just kneel back down again, is they have decided to coat everything in this expanding foam. So pretty much all of it is absolutely locked in, solid in place. Absolutely no idea how it's even possible to get to any of this. That is wet and sediment that I've cleaned up. You can still see the water and some of the sediment underneath that big pipe. So it's all sealed, virtually impossible to get to any of it. Things that are below that level now, well, as I say, we've pretty much ruled out all of the nozzles. I think it's going to be further down. There's 3 suction points in the base there. That's the ozone generator outlet, and then we've got those 2 nozzles there. So it seems quite likely that the leak is right down at the bottom in this tray somewhere, as we've got water underneath there, underneath the other side as well. Anyway, so yeah, having said, look, I don't think this is reasonable use. I think we've got some comeback after 3 years on a £5 spar, and it doesn't even appear to be possible to work on it. And they have got responsibilities. And when you purchase something of this value, you can expect reasonable use, especially when you've looked after it as well as this one's been looked after. So what we've decided to do is we're going to pay for them to come out. I think it was a 20 quid call out fee and then 25 quid per half an hour. So I'm going to be reasonable and get them to come out and have a look. I'm going to try and get as much of the foam out of the way as I can, but you know, the whole lot is bonded, you know, in place. This has been made in such a way as to make it pretty much irreparable. I mean, the whole lot has been, as you can see, just glued and foamed together. I mean, I don't know how this is. I assume it's made up. Yeah, it must be made upside down originally, and then they probably nail this plastic base on, and then turn it back over, and then just spray this sealant absolutely everywhere. So not only is it attached to all the pipes, it's attached to the insulation material, which is then in turn attached to the plastic base. So it's going to be an utter nightmare to try and get into any of this. There's one of the suction pieces there. That's one of the bits where it, you know, the chrome mesh on the inside, the grill, that's one of them. So I'm going to have to dig out all of that foam and make sure it's not leaking from that. But how you get to take that apart, it all looks pretty securely bonded with God knows what. So yeah, this is going to be an interesting one. This is the sort of sediment I'm talking about. If I just pick some of this up, there, that's what we've got. It's a wet sort of, if anyone's got a marine fish tank, the salt that forms on the lid, that's exactly the same texture. It's just wet and gritty sediment. So I think we've got a major problem to somehow deal with here. I mean, there are these pipe works. That's where the is that the ozone input? Yeah, it is. The ozone input is just in there. You can't probably see it on the camera, but it's so tricky to film kneeling down like this. But there's just no signs of any leak from here, so it's got to be as low down as it can possibly be, and it's all covered by the foam. So we're going to have to get in there and see if we can get any of it apart for a closer look. Yeah, big problem, but I think we're going to have to insist on our rights on this case. Don't think it's correct for someone just to turn around and say, well, you've abused it and that's what's damaged it. There's no signs of damage anywhere. It's just a simple leak, which they have made virtually impossible to find and fix. So yeah, I think this will be an interesting one. We'll update you during the course of the week. Alright, so just a quick update on this. We have scraped away all the foam that was around this, so we can check for leaks. I've lifted up this this manifold because there's a lot of water under it, and the flexi pipe going into the manifold is not square. I've just lifted that up on some wooden blocks just to lift it out of the water so I could dry it, and then I'll be able to feel around that pipe connection to the manifold for any leaks. We've done the same here with the ozone inlet. Again, there's water under it, but when I remove that water it flows back through, so there's some low points obviously. So yeah, again, I can't see any leaks there, and that's the other side of the connection to that one. There are two connections down here that we really can't get to. They are blowing water into the spar. It's those two at the bottom there. I've absolutely no idea how we're going to be able to get into there. So the other, let's see if I can get this, the other one is there, and that's all cleaned up. And then we move around to the other side. So that's the other, I'll get it on film, where the hell are we? There we are, that's the other one cleaned up. But I've also removed foam from this area, and as soon as I did that, the water's flowed into that hollow. Probably doesn't show up very well on the camera, but this in here is hollow and it's got water in it now. And looking at the end of that manifold, there's a lot of rust on those Jubilee clips at the bottom, a lot of sediment, as you can see on that bottom pipe. So this is not this is not a leak that's just happened a couple of days ago. This has been going on for some considerable time, I would think. Very hard, almost impossible to get into the pipework that feeds those two jets. So I have absolutely no idea how you would even attempt to get that out. I suppose you would have to literally cut all of these pipes out, get to where you need to go, and then replace everything with new pipes. I'm sure these pipes are a lot more flexible when they're new, and no doubt you can make them flex a bit with some hot air and get them really warm. But I can't see any leaks anywhere on any of these jets up the walls of the spar. None of these connections seem to be leaking, although I'll leave it a few hours and have another look. That area looks highly suspicious, and I can't get to those jets which are at the bottom there. I suppose the only way you could tell if it is leaking from there is to fill this back up again, so we've got a bit of head pressure, and turn them off. You just turn those outer plastic chrome discs, and that shuts them off. So that may well be the only way of determining where the leak is from, if it is from around there. I still think it's going down very slowly, but not as much as it was. So I think what I'm going to do is top it back up again, and we'll get it running, and just see if we can close those two off for starters and see if that stops the leak. If it does, that is where the problem is. It's either the back of those units or it's in that manifold. Actually, that's not going to help, is it? If it's in the manifold, it's going to leak without, you'd have to turn them all off, wouldn't you? You'd have to turn off all of that end to determine whether it's leaking from that manifold. I think you can, yeah, you can turn every single nozzle off. I'd have to look at the manifold and work out whether the four here are also fed from that. I don't think they are, actually, they're not. So let's revise that. If it's leaking from the back, no, that's still cobblers, because all of these pipes are interconnected. Doesn't matter which, even if one of those nozzles was leaking at the back, the water would flow from every single one of those nozzles back down into the pipework and out through the crack in whichever one it is. So let's start again. We will have to turn off every nozzle that is above the water line down at that end, Yeah, the 3 inlets, they must be connected direct to the pump. So is the water going to flow from the pump through and then leak out there, because there's pressure from the pumps forcing those jets. Yeah, interesting. I suspect it's still going to leak, isn't it? Because we've got no way to cut off the water completely, have we? That manifold is being fed by the pump the other side. There are no... Okay, so those jets and that manifold is being fed by this pump through there. There is no way to isolate that pump. I'm going to have to assume that water can flow through here on its own, whether the pump is running or not. So that's not going to help, is it? Yeah, not going to help at all. Christ, that's a real bummer, isn't it? If you can't isolate that. Interesting. So, just topped the spar up and turned it on and immediately found the fault. Just going to power this back on and lift the lid. It's one of those things where you needed to have it actually running to see the problem. And the hint was, in fact, this corrosion, sediment, whatever you want to call it, on this pump. Now, this insulation is raised up in a hump, and you'll see what that's doing in a minute. Just going to turn this pump on, and you can see water is pissing out of it. So that's the problem. So we're just back again. I've just rung Best Buys, and the main guy is not there till tomorrow, but I'm just looking at this pump number 2 impeller housing. There's actually quite a lot of residue around it and underneath. Just in there, there's some residue at the top here. I've absolutely no idea where that's coming from, but it looks like it may be about to fail. If I push my fingers under here, they actually come out soaking wet. So I actually think we've got both impellers leaking, or the impeller housings are both leaking, and that has got to be a warranty issue. You should not have impeller housing failures at 3 years on a £5,000 spar. It's clearly a weak spot. Very simple to change. 4 screws holding the housing on, and just these 2 pipes that are screwed in, no doubt with a O-ring on each. Currently just draining out the spar, and we'll probably remove one of the or pump 1 impeller housing. Just have a closer look at that. So yeah, so the clues were there, the strange residue here, and this really was the big clue, because if you look at it, you might not be able to see there, but this insulation material is raised up. It's in a bit of a hump, with the hump top here. So that's, as that's leaking down here, the water is being diverted off all over the place, but really that residue should have given it away, and with more experience you would instantly know that there's water falling on that, and it's being diverted elsewhere. So yeah, looks like we've got both impeller housings knackered. Certainly this one, you can watch the water pour out as I showed you a minute ago, On the other one I suspect the leak is a little more subtle at the moment. So yeah, there we go. Right, so as this is now completely drained, and we're waiting for a phone call about the impeller housings that one's pouring out when it's on and the other one's leaking. So we had the decal on order. Get that in focus. But this is a very weird arrangement. See, I thought this bulging out around the side here was a gasket, and it is, but it doesn't seem to be a replaceable one. This is not screwed in place at all. It is pushed into place on top of this, well, I don't know what it was, some sort of silicon gasket material. And then if we look under here, you can see it's just a sort of hot melt glue. I mean, it isn't, but it's that sort of arrangement. And if you touch where the circuit board is, there's a sort of soft jelly silicon material keeping the water out. Now these buttons, see if this will focus. So I've had to use some alcohol, isopropyl alcohol, to clean up all of the old glue. But if you touch where these buttons are, let me go into the side here, there's a sort of sticky jelly silicon material that's all around these buttons, obviously doing the sealing there. What bothers me particularly though is this area here. You can see it's a smoky finish, and if I press it down, you see that water that's moving around inside. Now that's sort of made it as far as that. What they told me to do was, just for cosmetic reasons, just get a sharp blade and trim up this bit that's sticking out, but I'm more concerned about what's going to happen long term in there. I don't know whether this circuit board is really as well sealed as I'm hoping it is, or whether we're going to have another failure here in the months to come. So when they come out for these impellers, I'm going to get them to look at that and see if that also needs some work doing on it. I'm certainly not going to just whack the decal back over that. Yeah, interesting one. Okay, so just trimmed all that up as they told me to do, so it certainly looks a lot better. I am just a bit concerned about what we can do with that, because it won't be far off getting right in there. So yeah, nice and neat. That's cleaned up quite nicely with the isopropyl alcohol, but yeah, this is going to be quite tricky to put on, because if you cock any part of that up and it gets onto this silicon greasy paste stuff, you're going to get that straight onto the adhesive and it's not going to stick very well. So yeah, going to have to be super careful applying that. Oh, this bloody focus. Yeah, I think what we'll do now is we'll see about getting these impeller pumps off. It looks like it's just 4 screws holding the plastic mount impeller in place, and those big nuts there, but whether that will actually then come off, I don't know. Yeah, we'll see. So in the earlier video I titled it something along the lines of dreadful customer service from Best Buy's. And it was a little bit misleading, and I think the guys there were a bit unhappy with that title. So I've changed it. It wasn't the customer service that was bad. The customer service has always been excellent, and especially John has always been excellent and looked after us and dealt with things quite quickly. What I was referring to was the outcome of the customer service, i.e. the response about replacing the faulty motors, or repairing them at least. It seems that the majority of spar pump manufacturers have spares to repair the wet end, as they call it. They also have bearing seal kits, but apparently this spar and this pump and Best Buys do not have any spares whatsoever. So we have a perfectly good electric motor, and the whole lot's going to be scrapped for the sake of a 10 to 15 quid bearing seal kit. So as far as this being out of warranty is concerned, yeah, you're absolutely right. It is about 12, 13, 14 months out of warranty. I'd have to look, but you can see the level of corrosion. This is not something that has just failed, last week, last month, or anything else. There's a lot. Well, you can see it. I mean, I don't even have to discuss this and explain myself on the video. It's pointless. It is self-explanatory that it has clearly been leaking for absolutely ages. Again, you can probably see all that scale underneath there. Let's see if I can reach in and pull some of it out. Actually, yeah, it's just resting on the, there you go, it's just resting on the surface of the foil. It's dried out overnight. In fact, if I feel underneath there, the water has now pretty much evaporated, fortunately. But ignore that, that's bits of foam that I've trimmed off so we can see what's been going on. But this is chemicals from the water. The water's evaporated and left this residue. The bits of blue are not, obviously that's glue from the pipework. But if you look down here, this is long-standing corrosion. I do not believe this has happened recently. I believe this to have been leaking for many months, and it's one of the reasons I feel this should be dealt with under a out of warranty but goodwill basis. This is not what we expected to see 3 years down the line of buying this £5,000 spar. So yeah, sorry guys, your response was unacceptable but timely and in a professional manner, and apologies if my title did not make that clear. But yeah, you can see what's going on, and the fact that this manufacturer has decided to not produce any spares is quite appalling. Frankly, all it needs is a good clean up and new seals. The pump is in excellent working condition and to have to change the whole lot, it's just not environmentally sound, it's not cost effective, it's not okay in any way, shape or form. And I'm not going to apologise for making that point over and over again. It's not acceptable. So there we go. Oh, and the reason this is been taken out is because we're obviously not going to get very far with Best Buys. We've now written to them. We've given them 28 days to respond. If the response is not satisfactory, I don't see any reason why we cannot pursue this as a claim. Our solicitors have come back saying they believe we've got a valid claim under the Sales of Goods Act that was in force when we bought this spar. It's changed now, but because of when we bought this 3 and a bit years ago, the Sale of Goods Act, was it 1979, was in force at that time, and we can expect any item to be free of minor defects, inherent faults, and should be durable. I think durable may well be the key in this case, because that has been leaking for many months, so it would have been just outside possibly the warranty period, it may have been in the warranty period when this started to leak, but because of the design of the plastic base, the average user is going to have no clue that it is sat there full of water. Heat and evaporation will not allow the water to build up too much unless you've got a major leak. If you've got a slight drip from a leaking seal, like that's been leaking for ages, you are not going to know unless you get the covers off and routinely inspect it. And at no point was that ever suggested to us, nor would we expect it to be. There are high voltages present, obviously, again, we would have spotted the ozone unit leaking if we had routinely inspected this every 3 months or so. And if we ever get this up and running again, that is exactly what I'll be doing, because there are issues, that being the most important one. Even if they change these pumps for us, we're going to be in the same situation in 2 or 3 years. Now, I would certainly be taking the covers off to inspect the spar. You can see a lot of water just underneath that white pipe still. I'm going to try and get all of this soaked up with some cloths, clean everything up, and then see where we go from there. But we clearly won't be using our spar for some considerable time. Very disappointing indeed. Okay, so I thought we would get this out. I've got nothing to lose either way. If Best Buys are going to change this for us, well, it doesn't matter what condition the old one's in, does it? If they're fitting a new one for us. And there are a whole row, or a whole load of screws to change or to unscrew. Then there's various points that you can tap around the plastic end there, here, and there. Gently tap it and that will come off. There are 3 removable screws here with little O-rings on, and they seem to go into the high pressure section of the, this is, so it's bringing it in here and blowing it out coming in here and blowing it out there. So those holes are on the high pressure side, so I'm not really sure what they're there for. Maybe to help deal with any airlocks and that sort of thing. So there is then this grubby looking, I don't know what they call that, I'd have to look it up, but certainly some marks on it. It just seems to rub. If it goes on like that, it's on there, spinning around, or allowing that to spin inside it. Anyway, the point is that this impeller would now unscrew from the pump, but I doubt we're going to be able to get that off. You can see in here there's hair and stuff that's got through that. It's a bit grubby. But no damage. It literally is just hair and bits of whatever. I noticed some identifying marks on this wet end, as they call it. There's some marks just in here. I'm going to have a closer look and write them down. But I just cannot believe that for this motor, they produced their own dedicated wet end. It would make absolutely no sense whatsoever. So my hope is that this is a replaceable unit, and if we can work out exactly what it is, maybe we can change the bearings and the seals and save this whole thing. It just doesn't make any sense to have custom made that part to go with the motor. Whether we can actually free the impeller, I think normally there's a flat bladed screwdriver required to go in there, like so, and hold that in place, and then you can unscrew this. But there's absolutely no way that's happening. That's going to be lock solid, I'm sure, but we'll give it a go. Don't want to damage anything, but we'll certainly try and undo it, but I don't think that's going to happen. Again, just wanted to record the level of corrosion just on these points that I've already cleaned up. I don't believe this has been leaking for, you know, like, oh, it only happened last week. There's rust in there, lots of corrosion. Again, all of these signs are at the bottom. This is the bottom of the motor, so gravity is pulling all of this down as it leaks. Yeah, I'm going to look these numbers up now and see if we can find out anything about this end. If we can, then I think we'll have to get the motor apart so we can clamp the central, what they call it on a motor like this, a stator perhaps. No, the stators are the windings. Whatever, it needs popping gently in a vise to hold the main body still, so this can be undone with well, something that's not going to damage it. So that means some sort of belt wrench of some description. Not even sure I've got one, so it may have to be a special purchase. There's no way it's coming undone by hand, that's for sure. It's a shame they can't put, instead of a flat bladed screwdriver slot on the back, it's a shame it couldn't have been a hexagonal head for a socket or a spanner. It's just very weird. Okay, so here we are with the motor and the completely knackered impeller housing, or wet end as they call them. So I have removed the fan blade protector from the end. I've managed to use a big thick flat bladed blade in there with that wrench, and using my fingers I have managed to grab hold of that and undo it, and free it from this center shaft. You can see how badly damaged that is. Hoping that will all clean off. What concerns me slightly is what the hell that is, because it is not on the new. That's the bit that goes onto that, and there is no signs of that being included with the wet ends, and it doesn't look like it's come off of that. It is a separate seal that's been put on there for some reason. So as you can see, that has been pissing for absolutely ages. There is the actual seal, and there's another seal in there as well. Quite how you get all those out, I don't know, but fortunately Best Buy is, after some reasoning and some backwards and forwards with them, agreed to take two new wet ends off of some existing pump assemblies that they had, and now I've got two new wet ends to fit. I've also got, I don't know how it happened, but I managed to order 3 seal kits, so we're going to also try and repair the old wet ends as well, so we've got backups. But as you can see from that, that is pretty extensive damage, and it's obviously been going on for absolutely ages. So the way forward now is to completely clean this shaft up. If it had been impossible to undo that by holding that still and turning the impeller, we would have had to have removed these four, I think it's four, yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4 bolts that go through this, and literally pull the ends off and get the internal part out and bolt it up in a vise or you know, whatever, strap wrench. But yeah, managed to get it apart, and now we've just got an awful lot of cleaning to do, and we'll see if we can reassemble the new wet end. So yeah, that's the next stage, and we'll be tagging all these videos together, no doubt, because there's quite a lot of other stuff we're doing on the spar, and we'll be covering that either in separate videos or tagging them together with this one. Alright, so just got this onto the table here, and hopefully you can see this extensive damage. The actual impeller that screws on only goes on so far, and looking at how far away the seal is, yeah, so the seal is on that. So I don't think, just trying to work out whether it matters whether that is corroded or not. No, it doesn't, but I think it kind of proves the point that, I mean, look how badly that shaft is corroded there. There is a sort of plastic seal here. I've just pushed it back in a little bit just so I can see this corrosion in there and the damage to the shaft. But does it matter? This is a floating, it's a spring-loaded bearing that is going around and sealing on the impeller. It's not actually going around the shaft, is it? So that doesn't make any difference. The actual seal is going to be around that. Yeah, spring loaded, and yeah, so I think it is going to be okay to clean that all up. We'll get some ACF 50 on it. We'll get rid of this old metal that's just falling apart. We'll carefully prise this rubber seal off again, and we'll treat that with some 303 Aero protector, and we'll see if we can get that up and as new. But yeah, it's a mess. I think we're going to get the Dremel and a wire brush just to clean this up. But I think bits of the old rusted metal have been coming off, and they've been going into that shaft, you know, the way the shaft sits, and there's bits in there. So it's a bit of a mess, but don't tell me that's just been leaking for a few weeks or even a few months. That is extensive leakage, I would suggest, that's been going on for a year or more. I wouldn't be surprised. So yeah, so next stage really is to see if we can clean up as much of this as possible, and it doesn't appear to be any bearing damage. I think this seal has probably done its job, but we're going to have to clean this up and make sure it is still sealing for future leaks. But God, yeah, it's not good, is it? Okay, so we are back again, and we really have got extensive corrosion. There's quite a lot of the shaft that is actually missing. It's currently coated with ACF 50, which we're going to leave to soak for an hour or so. I've used a wire brush and Dremel just to try and clear up this surface just here, because that is where the little rubber seal goes to stop any nastiness getting into the end of the motor housing and the bearing there. So again, I've got a little bit of 303 Aerospace protectant to just gone into a bag, and that O-ring can, that rubber seal can just soak in there for the hour as well, and hopefully the ACF 50 will stop this corroding any further, whilst it's not an issue, you know, for the bearing, because that's not where the bearing fits, fortunately. But if that corrodes any further, at some point that shaft is just going to snap that switch on. I mean, it's obviously incredibly strong still at the moment, but yeah, we wouldn't want that getting any worse if we can help it. So yeah, a good coating of ACF 50, and literally just going to leave that to soak in for an hour, and that should kill off any further corrosion, and then we'll be back. We'll refit the little rubber seal there, and we'll see about nipping up the new wet end, and at some point we'll have a look at repairing the old ones. Obviously critical to make sure that these threads are spotless, and so again I have used the Dremel to clean these up, and they are as good as new now. So yeah, we're getting there. Just shocked at how much steel from that shaft had been corroded and has chipped off, and yeah, just a bit of a mess, but hopefully we can save all of this. Okay, so we have the old housing, and let's get the sun out. That is the new bearing that's in place, so I've cleaned it up as best I can. I would advise caution when cleaning the sediment residue off of this. It's obviously the chemicals that are in your spar that have come out with the water, obviously, and then that's dried off and left the sediment, so you're going to have all sorts of chlorine and other things in this powder. So just be a bit cautious of what you're using to clean it off, and you know, don't be breathing any of the powder in. You can probably see the actually that's the, let me show you the old bearing, sorry, the old seal first, completely broken. The rubber has split and left that in two pieces, but yeah, on that inner side, well, you can see here, hopefully you've got that metal ring all the way around, and you can actually tap that to get the bearing out from this side. It easily came out. There's no drama getting that out. What I've done is just use some 303 Aerospace protectant just on this and the new one, and wiped it then, you know, wiped any excess off, and gently press that in by hand. I managed to seat it by hand, but if you want to double check, in my case a 32mm thin-walled socket goes directly over this metal rim all the way around, and with it on the floor you can just press down with the socket and you'll find that will bed it in quite nicely. So, you know, that's the housing end done, no problems with that. Now the impeller end is slightly different, because this is the new one, and it goes in that way with this sort of carbon ceramic part on the outside. Now it's obviously quite stiff in there, and the easiest way I found was to take a small flat bladed screwdriver and don't wedge it in there between the plastic and the seal. Put it on the inside, so it's actually on the ceramic bearing and the seal, and you can actually lift that ceramic bit. You can prise the ceramic up just by wedging it between the seal and itself, So yeah, if you work it out all the way around, the ceramic piece will pop out, just leaving the plastic. Trying to do this looking through the screen. So yeah, it will come out like that, just leaving the rubber piece behind, and yeah, you can then just pull the rubber piece out. Again, I have just washed this, cleaned it, got rid of any of the fur that seemed to be on the impeller. Wasn't too much, but just a little bit, so I've washed it, given it a good scrub. And there's a few bits still on there. It's some sort of special plastic. I'm sure you can see the shininess of this. I don't know what it's been impregnated with. Maybe it's a graphite, some graphite content in the plastic, but I mean, whatever. But I had sprayed around there, and I'm just going to spray the new seal just with this protectant, just so it's got a coating all over it, and that will just carefully press down and in like so. Can't really do this with the phone now, so I'm just going to have to make sure that is all the way in. I'll probably use the old bearing to press that all down. In fact, I wonder if I should have taken that apart first and then put the rubber in and then the ceramic. So anyway, all pretty straightforward stuff, but I'll get back to you in a minute. Okay, so again, pretty straightforward. On this outer housing that I've just put back in, there is a large O-ring all the way around the outside, and I would suggest a smear of, well, I use SGM 494 silicone grease. You can check that out on the internet, but something like that or very similar, just to smear all the way around the O-ring, and then you can offer up, obviously the impeller's gone back in, and the it's like a sort of top hat shape large washer, has to be the right way on, and then you can offer up the housing, and you've got to make sure that these obviously line up all the way around. So just carefully align this whole outer housing, and the grease will assist in you pushing it on. You can get it aligned and then gently push, but you'll probably find you have to push in the corner, around the edges just a little bit, all the way around until you've got the whole thing in. Something to bear in mind is the seal is doing the work here. All this needs to be is lightly nipped up. There are brass inserts in this piece of plastic here, and if you over tighten the screws you will simply rip out these brass inserts, so just be wary of that. Absolutely no reason to over tighten these whatsoever. They are just holding the face, this whole unit in place gently, and the actual O-ring is doing all of the sealing work. So do not over tighten, and that will leave you with a rebuilt wet end. I'm so tempted to put this back in rather than the new one. I want to see if that kit really has solved the problems. A bit of corrosion on here. I'm just going to treat these with a little bit of ACF 50, and yeah, this one should be good to go. The pump is still soaking there in the ACF 50. We'll wipe that off in a minute, and we'll also get out the little washer, the seal there. Looks like that bag's been leaking. So we'll clean all that up and get this reassembled. But whether I use the old wet end or the new one, I'm not entirely sure. I'm very tempted to use the the old one, especially as I've got the seals fitted. It would be interesting to see whether that solves the problem or not. I think we're going to have to do that. I can easily unscrew it and fit the brand new one, but I think just to prove a point that these seal kits do actually work, we're going to have to fit the old one back in. Okay, so this one is all cleaned up and reassembled. I've got the majority of the sediment off. We're just going to cover a couple of tips that might help anyone seeing this video in the future. So, tools needed. I was lucky to get a flat blade on the end of the motor to undo the impeller without too much trouble. If you do get that stuck, you can take the whole motor apart by undoing these 4 bolts, but obviously that's a lot more faffing around. I have removed all the wiring, writing everything down as I went. I did drop a little star washer into here. Just bear in mind, if you do drop anything like this washer into this control box, the wires obviously go through into the motor and you can lose your star washer or whatever it is straight into the main part of the motor. You can just turn it upside down and shake it out, which is exactly what I did with this. But just bear in mind that you can drop things straight into here and then forget they're there. So just be careful with that. Flat blade with socket adapter helped on that. A stubby screwdriver helped to get access to the mounting nuts. A small 8mm was required for the bolts that are just holding this on. Again, as I've mentioned in the past, do not over tighten these. There are brass inserts in the plastic and this does not need to be over tightened. Just nip it up gently. Same with the screws here, and brass inserts, do not over tighten. This whole housing has a big O-ring around the outside. You've put grease on it and pushed it back on. These are just holding that in place. I would suggest tighten them up in a normal torque setting, so opposite side, and work your way around like that. Bit of overkill, but you might as well. At this point, that is now ready to go back into the spar. Purchased 2 new O-rings for the flexi pipe connectors that are going to screw back onto this. The old ones will have a flattened edge. I would use a little bit of the SGM 494 silicone grease on this just to lubricate and hold the O-ring in place. The seal kits were £18.50. Can't remember where, it was either eBay or an online hot tub, something like Spa hot tub superstore parts, something like that. Seem to stock all sorts, from the complete units to the wet ends to the kits. Pretty easy to get these out. The big one pushes out from behind. You can get a screwdriver onto the metal part and knock that out, and the smaller one, as I showed earlier, was easy to remove by lifting out the carbon ceramic disc rather than lever anything on this plastic. So that was that. I'm trying to think of anything else that was useful. The 3 screws here with O-rings on are apparently to remove any airlocks that you may get if it has been incorrectly filled. In this case, ours has to be filled up through the filter housing. So if there is an airlock, you can actually remove these. The holes go straight through into the high pressure outlet section of the wet end. We've never had an airlock, it's never been a problem, but that's what they're there for. That was probably about it on this one. We're going to go through various things on another video about what I would suggest you do a long term, because this has been leaking. I bet my life that these have been leaking inside the warranty period. I'm quite sure of that. Certainly this one. The other one possibly not, because it's not pumping water out everywhere yet. But my recommendation is to get the spar inspected, perhaps every 6 months, every 12 months, certainly whilst it's in the warranty period. Get it inspected. The call out is 20-30 quid, half hour's work, 20-30 quid. All they've got to do is take a couple of the side panels off of the spar and carefully look around for any signs of moisture, water pooling, sediment like this one was covered in. It's got to be worth it, because if you're out of warranty like we are, we've had to go through a lot of aggro, talking backwards and forwards to the store. In the end they were very helpful. As soon as I found out that this is a known issue and the original seals were of reasonably poor quality and were prone to premature failure, the new seals are slightly different. I think they're slightly different in material. Certainly the one I showed earlier, the rubber had split on the main bearing seal. We saw that on the earlier videos. And I have also found a water leak sensor. It is a battery powered, well, it's a pack of 3 of them actually, 3 battery powered water leak sensors, and I am going to be fitting 1 or 2 inside the spar, and if it gets wet or damp, and we'll test this on separate videos, a very loud 85 decibel alarm will go off, and I think it will go off for some considerable days if there is a leak or if it detects the moisture. So we're going to be trying those, but I think the key here for anybody else is get your spar inspected, because I'm afraid out of sight, out of mind seems to be the thing that's gone on here. I assumed everything was running happily, topping up the water as normal, hadn't noticed any excessive consumption. It was only when we didn't use the spar for 3 or 4 days on a trot that I noticed the water level had gone down, which it would not normally have done. A little bit, but not to the inch or 2 that it had actually gone down. So yeah, get the cover off if you're not happy to do it yourself, and have a look in there. And obviously there are mains voltages inside this spar, so if you don't know what you're doing, don't even bother. Just call out your spar supplier or somebody else who's competent, get the covers off and get it inspected, and then if you have a problem you can quickly get it rectified under the warranty. If you don't realise it's happening, you could be like us, a year out of warranty, and end up with a major leak like this one was, actually pumping water out of that centre bearing when the pump was running. Hopefully it's okay now, it's cleaned up pretty good. We've still got the other one to do because it has a small leak, so I'm going to do the same as we've done on this one, and get it all back together again with some new O-rings. We have a control panel to sort out, and what else have we got? Oh, a new spar nozzle went in, and that's been done. And yeah, that's it then. We'll just give it a good clean, refill it, and fingers crossed that these repaired pumps are going to be good. So yeah, back later. So we are just in here reassembling the pump and everything, and there's a couple of things to remember I think here. 2 O-rings, which I've already chucked actually, go on to the ends of these flexi pipes. Put a smear of SGM 494 or similar into the channel, O-ring back in, and then just press the O-ring in with the grease. Something to remember is, do not put these nuts and washers onto this motor when you put it in place. If you do that, you are not going to get these pipes on. You need to be able to lift the motor up and tilt it so this outlet lines up with the pipe. Same with this one, slight angle is needed that way to allow easy reinstallation of these pipes and the clamps here. Once they've been done up and done up tight, you can then wiggle the motor back into position and force it down onto the 4-screw studs, and then get the washers and the bolts, the nuts done back up. You'll find a size is it 13mm little stubby spanner works very well in the tight access that you've got down here and the other side. There is a rubber gasket or silicon gasket underneath this box, and this box has to come off to get the earth which is underneath it off in the first place, and it's got to be off when you feed the wires back through here, do the earth. Just bear in mind yet again that there are holes straight down into the motor, so when you're doing these terminals up and fitting your 4 bolts that are inside, there's 2 underneath this little sealant strip, and there's another 2 this side and here. You might want to cover those holes up with a bit of rag whilst you're doing the bolts, and then pull the rag out. At this point we can pop the terminal block back on. I'm going to do this off camera, I need both hands. I would also point out, when you do any work on the spar, obviously make sure the isolation switch is off and lock it in the off position with a padlock. You never know what's going to happen, and you're only going to get one chance at cocking that up. So isolation switch off and padlocked off. Okay, so really the tip here is to leave the motor free and loose, so you can tilt it around to enable easy connection of the pipes. Once I've done those up, a spray of ACF 50 on each one, that will keep any of the corrosion that was on there at bay. We've literally just got to put this terminal block back into position, screw it down, and then make the connections again, and that side will be done. Then we've hoovered up a lot of the debris from in here, and we'll have another bash at that. At some point we'll put the leak warning alarms in here, and we'll also be spraying any metal parts with corrosion with some ACF 50, possibly like that little clip there. I can't see through the camera whether that's just light that's making that look tarnished or not, but I think there was definitely one down in there that had got into the water and was tarnished, so we will be giving that a spray. So yeah, that's pretty much it. The only other thing that can go here is there is a clip here that is screwed in place to hold this capacitor in place, and that can break, and it can also become loose. If it becomes loose, you will hear a horrible vibrating noise coming from the spar somewhere, and yeah, it's either because that clip's broken or has become loose. There are some silicon rubbery type strips here that the capacitor sits on, and the two of the 4 screws that hold this box in place are actually underneath it, so just bear that in mind. So that's it for now, and back later. Okay, wiring is all back in place, cable clamps back in there, and gland nut is tight. Just to make sure, again, if you drop any of these, they can go straight into the motor down here, so cover that up with some paper or whatever you've got handy. The last thing you want to do is have made all these connections, pipes, wires, everything, and drop a washer down there at the last second. So yeah, cover the hole. A couple of tips here: you put your wire and terminal onto the post, then the star washer, then the plain washer, then the nut. Do not over tighten these nuts, let the star washer do its job. 7mm mini spanner will do the job, and that's it. Now just a question of putting the top back on, and this side is finished. That is what the label says on there, and that side is done. O-ring is in place, just the 4 screws to do. There's a earth on the motor housing, ACF 50 has been applied, and that is that for that particular pump. We'll now move on to the single speed pump on the other side, and then we'll be removing the control panel, fitting a new one and repairing the old panel. And we have just taken delivery of the 3 water leak detector alarms, and we'll be looking at mounting those as well. Okay, so we have moved over to the single speed pump. There is a slightly different arrangement of the wet end. This one's pointing up to a manifold, and an input from that end. There's a couple of issues here. There is even less space to get to these nuts. They're 13mm. Frankly, without my little mini 13mm ratcheting spanner, I would have really struggled getting in there. The 2 left nuts that side, and the other side you can use the ratchet on, and on this end you just use the normal end. There's a bit of a design issue here where that has been rubbing for quite well, from brand new. That pipe has been resting on there from new. Doesn't appear to have done any damage other than a great big kink in the pipe. But yeah, so we're going to be lifting that out. I actually found it quite hard to undo the nut from this one, and there's something I bought in anticipation of any problems with this strap wrench from eBay, and you just literally wrap it around whatever it is you need to undo, or undo or do up, and yeah, very worthwhile piece of kit that is. You can use that on anything from you know, jam jar lids to oil filter housings to things like this. I actually bought it because I suspected I may have to strip these pumps down completely, or the motors, to be able to get the impellers off, and I thought rather than put it in the vise I would grip the body of the motor with this. But yeah, there is the corrosion on the nuts and washers. So yeah, there's definitely been, well, I'm pretty certain this one's been leaking as well. It's certainly showing signs of it. So we're going to be getting that out. Just got to undo the wires. I've already cleaned out with the vacuum cleaner. That was where the corrosion is. You can see that little Jubilee clip just to the right, on at the bottom of that manifold. It's rusty. It's not because it's leaking there, it's been sat in a pool of water. So I'm going to be spraying some ACF 50 in there, across as many of those little Jubilee clips as possible. Probably the hardest part of the spar to work on in there, but yeah, fortunately we don't have to. So we'll get this out and have a look at it. Okay, so motor's out, simpler arrangement. Obviously it's only single speed. Just something to be aware of is this low earth. It is bolted to the side there, which you can't undo with the motor in situ. Just looking, that looks like a long-term pool of sediment just here. And if we have a closer look at the pump, so let me just see if I can stand this up on the end. So you've got what looks like a leak here, but if you look in there, if I can get the camera right, just there, that looks like a leak and sediment coming down. So yeah, not as bad as the twin speed pump. Of course the 2-speed pump is the one that does the main work, because it is you know, it's the one that's circulating and filtering and doing all of the main work. Cap here is held in place with the same clip, but there's no material underneath this. I think that material might have been added by one of the guys from Best Buy's when they came out, because we had that vibration. So yeah, although this hasn't caused a problem, wouldn't hurt just to put some foam underneath there if anyone was concerned. So yeah, I'm pretty certain this is leaking, but nowhere near as bad as the other one. So that's it. We'll get this apart and get that kit, a bearing kit, fitted to it, and get this one back inside. Okay, so if you saw the other film of the pump, the 2-speed pump, you can see how utterly destroyed the shaft is on that pump. Now this one is nice and free running. There's no damage. Well, there's no signs of anything here at all. There's a little mark on there. But that is very much nicer than the other one. No corrosion whatsoever. However, we were correct about the leak. You can clearly see that that's been leaking. That's up that way, and that has been leaking coming out there. So I was absolutely spot on about that. That is the impeller. Looks a bit grubby. We'll be cleaning up all that fluff that's got in there somehow, and trying to see if it's got similar, it's almost a glittery finish, but the sun's not out and I'm not seeing that same sort of finish to this one. And maybe it is, it's just the fact that the sun's not out. So yeah, it looks like there's some corrosion on here that will, well, it's leaked, and it's that sediment that's on there, so we'll be gently getting that off, and we'll drive out that failed bearing. That's the inside. On this occasion it is not split like the other one. It's just leaking for whatever reason. The other one was in 2 pieces if you saw that video. So yeah, this one came apart as if it had just been nipped up at the factory. The impeller just almost fell off. But yeah, you can see why, compared to the other pump, this has been leaking for a relatively short period of time. Let's get that off of there, and yeah, it's going to be much easier. Well, not easier, it's going to be the same to repair, but far less damage on that. And I think that rather proves the point that the other one has been leaking for absolutely ages. Okay, so this one came apart easily. Repair kit went on, without any problems. Very tricky getting these nuts back on. My stubby ratcheting spanner actually got stuck. Imagine this bar underneath there. The spanner went on, got caught behind that, and it was an absolute bloody nightmare to get off. The liquid on there, you can see, is ACF 50. I've sprayed all of the 4 nuts with the washers, so that is all up and hopefully running again. Nothing too complicated, just pretty much the same as the other one. It's just a smaller motor, same wet end. Grease and new O-rings into here, and nip those up. Use your strap wrench if you can't get a good purchase on it, but don't over tighten. So the next thing we need to move on to is the control panel. Now I scraped off the decal because it was peeling off all around the edges, and that came off just really in little bits, but underneath there is a sort of acetate sheet membrane, and that was also hanging off at one end. What I didn't realise was that is not part of the new decal. That is actually a covering that goes over this, because of all this silicone gel that makes up these buttons. There is a sheet over the top that is glued in place. So although I've ordered another one of these, the actual whole unit, I think we can probably repair this, and I'm going to find some acetate sheet and cut it to size. We've got the 3M double-sided adhesive. It's the same stuff that is used on mobile phone screens, so we will stick the acetate on, and we'll then try it. If that works, we will then put the decal on. Something very interesting that the guys at Best Buy told me, the actual Balboa control panel, which is down the other end of the spar, actually has two sockets, so you can plug two control panels in. So we're going to fit the new control panel and possibly use this one remotely. So yeah, it might be an interesting thing. We've got to get this out now. It's it is on again another 3M, I think it's a VBM double-sided tape, and that's what's holding this down to the spar, and on the other side it is siliconed in, so we're going to have to remove that silicon, and then from the other side just push this out and hopefully release all of the 3M seal. That is a leak underneath there, and it can't get into the circuit board, but it could potentially get inside the spar if the sealant on the other side failed. So yeah, that's what we're going to do next. Get this out, get it disconnected from the control panel, and we'll fit the new one. See if there is a second spare socket in case we can reuse this, and yeah, that should solve the problem with the spar. We can then refill it and possibly use this control panel remotely in the future. We're also going to be looking at the water leak detector alarms as well. So yeah, we'll get this out next. Yeah, a bit of a nightmare getting that out. There's silicon underneath that you need to trim out, and yeah, just the sharp Stanley blade, trim as much of that as you can, and yeah, prise up or push up from one end. In our case, it was already been, the water had already got in that end, and yeah, push up from underneath and try and slide a blade around the edge without scratching anything. This is mostly cleaned up okay. There's a couple of little black lines, but I mean, you can barely feel them. I certainly don't want to use anything aggressive on this, so I think that will be fine. That is the new control panel, very slightly different to the one I ordered. The one I ordered said jets 1, aux and flip. Actually what we want is jet 1, jet 2 and flip. So we do have the Wellis, or Myline Spar version of Decal, so we could take this off and change it, but I'd rather just use this and not have to touch anything. All sealed in at the back with this sticky silicon like gel. So that is all ready to plug into the control panel, and as you can see on the back here, if you ever have to get one of these out because this seal's started to fail, this is a 3M VHB tape. It's a slightly thicker foam tape, and what had happened, as you saw in the earlier videos, this has absorbed all the water and has expanded and then is you know, poking out the side. So we are going to have to get that backing tape off, and making absolutely sure we've got it the right way around. We're going to have to lower that into place. Might put a couple of marks either side in something that's easily, in fact I'll probably put a bit of tape in there because I want to get it in between the hole, so we'll give it a bit of a gap either side for the silicone to go back in, and the easiest way to do that is just mark it with some tape, I think, at top and bottom, left and right, or at least a couple of bits of tape top and left, and then we'll get that back in place. We have some Dow Corning, I think it's 781 sealant, so we'll seal that up inside and then go and connect it. We'll probably take the control panel cover off first. In fact, the end of the spar that we need to get to doesn't even have the main panel removed at the moment because we haven't needed to get in there. So we're going to have to take that main panel off and unscrew the control panel. Just make sure that it is indeed exactly the same, and it should be. This is the Balboa TP600 system we have fitted on this, so it really shouldn't be a problem. Various warnings on here. Check proper connector alignment. Turn the power off, yeah, of course, and various patents on the other label. So yeah, that is the plan. Next, it's as clean as we can get it without using anything harsh, and there's minute scratches all over it really where I've gone over it with carefully with the blade, just trying to lift that whatever it is off, but there's minute scratches all over the spar if you catch it at the right angle in the sun. So as you'd expect from 3 years of use, but I'm thinking that will go back on there no problem. It might be worth just heating up the surface very gently, but it's clean, that's the main thing. It's got to be absolutely spotless to make a good seal there. Okay, so side panel off, double check that the this is exactly the same connector that we've got fitted. It should be, but you never know. We're going to check it first. Also going to look for the second socket so we can run 2 of these control panels if we ever do get the other one working. And yeah, that's it. Back later. Okay, so we've now got the cover off the Balboa control panel. Interesting diagram on the back. Shows various fuses and jumpers and other very interesting information, and that is the control panel. We've already had that open once when we had to change the element assembly, and just as Best Buy's said, there is a second socket for a controller. That is the one that is plugged in currently, so we're just going to there's a little cable clamp that's not actually clamping anything. It's these wires have just been fed through, but they're not clamped for any, in any way. So we will undo that. Looks like it is a strip covering 2 of the, yeah, there's a strip there that's just covering 2 of the wires. So yeah, well, again, can't do this with one hand, and I'm not going to waste your time. We're only going to talk about this as we go, but yeah, all pretty straightforward. Look, that is the LED controller. A couple of these LEDs have snapped off at the body. We're going to have to super glue or silicone or hot melt them back in place. I'm not going to change the whole bodies at this point, although they are available. It means knocking it out and it's already perfectly sealed, so we'll keep an eye on that sort of thing. But yeah, I just wanted to show you that and the fact that there is a second socket and what it can be used for. Right then, so this is now ready for filling and the leakage checks. That is one of the broken lights fallen down. We're going to get some hot melt glue and put that back in place, but strangely none of these are showing any signs of leaking. It's a shame about the inside of the spar, because on the outside it looks absolutely brand new. I've just cleaned it all up. The new controller is connected, however it is just sat there loose, because if it happens to be faulty, then prizing it off of there is going to make a hell of a mess of it, and I doubt they're going to be very happy with me sending it back faulty when it's been fitted. So it's all connected down there. A couple of the LEDs to fix back in place. We've obviously got to do the alarms, and we'll show those in a separate video, but everything's cleaned up absolutely spotlessly, as it always does. I did buy a new filter housing cover screw, but on closer inspection the actual captive nut is absolutely knackered and corroded, and all the plastic around it is broken, so we won't be fitting that again. Filters are currently being soaked and cleaned, so we're just going to fill this up and check for any leaks. You can clearly see the difference here between the 303 protectant applied areas and the bits where it doesn't go. Quite a different colour. The 303 Aerospace protectant is absolutely fantastic and has kept this spar cover shiny and looking like new. You can use it on absolutely anything: tyres, vinyl, rubbers, cam belts, V-belts, you name it, it can be used in it, or on it rather. So yeah, there we go. Just fingers crossed now that there is no leak after this has all been done, otherwise we're going to be back to square one and be ripping these out again. So yeah, there we go, time to fill it up. Okay, so we have got the panel back in place. We have got to put silicone sealant behind it just to make absolutely sure that is sealed. We have filled the spar up and run the pumps, and absolutely fine, no signs of any leaks whatsoever. Unfortunately there were two of the LED lights that were broken. Well, they're barely hanging on, frankly. So that's one there snapped, and one missing from there. And when you look at them, you'll see that that's the bit from the outside. There's a little neoprene or silicone white seal, and that's where it goes. And then so that's fed through from the outside, and then this nut's done up. Unfortunately, they have then covered everything with hot melt glue and sealant, and although you can get these lenses, which I've got here, you're then going to have to cut out the shroud, which is pretty, it was probably a nice soft rubber to start with, but it is virtually solid now, so I've had to cut that out and then pry off all of the silicone and glue and all the other rubbish they've put on there. I've managed to break two wires doing that, so I've just simply soldered those back on. They're very easy to check whether these are working properly. Just grab yourself a 3-volt button cell. The black wire goes to the positive side, and then on the negative side you can just touch each wire in turn, yellow, green and red, and you'll get blue, green and red LED colours from here. So very easy to test. I'm hoping now that we can get that pushed into the new, if I can get it open with one hand. Hold on a sec. Okay, sorry about that. So that is the new housing, new washer, new nut, and we are going to strip out each one by one and insert everything like so, and then put some silicone in the end. I mean, actually I might use hot melt glue, because if it does expand and contract here, it's only going to crack the end and it might fall out at that point. But yeah, the issue is heat just making this expand and contract where this is nipped up through the body of the spar, and over time that just damages the plastic until it fractures, and then the light can fall off, just literally leaving the bit you see here stuck in place. Now if you're lucky, it won't leak, but more likelihood, the greater likelihood is that it will crack. Something else has been put on that where it's broken, and it's a hard material, possibly, yeah, I don't know, it's a bit of corrosion on the silicon. It's not an ideal setup, and I have looked for more professional metal bodied lenses, but I can't find anything like that, so I've opted to buy a whole bag of 18, and I am literally going to take out every single LED from the old ones, cut them open, make sure everything is soldered correctly, test them, and reassemble. You can fortunately fold over the wires and feed this plug through from the outside, so you can do all of this work and then feed it through from the outside, so there's no issues there. So yeah, that's the next stage. It's going to take a few days probably, and I'm going to drain the spar down. Oh look, there's another bloody nozzle off there. I bet that's broken. We've already had to change one because the metal clips were broken. Oh, it's cold. And yeah, you can see there's a plastic clip there, and that's broken, it's not springing out, and one there is also broken, so we are going to have to buy yet another nozzle. Oh jeez, oh, that's annoying. Yeah, they're about, oh, I don't know what they are, 10-15 quid. I've already got one fitted over in that far corner. This piece here is a slightly different pattern, so now we've got to buy another one. I'll take that one out there so it matches the one that is there, and then we'll put that one in here so they all match. It doesn't look too obvious, but yeah, I'm just going to drain this down. It's going to take a couple of days, and it's going to be another trip to the bloody spar shop for another one of these. It's really annoying. I guess they are all going to go like that at some point. The stupid thing is none of them are touched. They're never turned on or off or anything, so how that breaks, I don't know why that breaks there, but it does. That's the second one. You can see the cracks through it. Very annoying. Okay, so finally we are done. I have taken out, as you saw, all of the LEDs, all of the lenses, and we've mounted the lenses back in the spar on their own. I've cleaned all the crap and grommets and rubber and sealant and whatever else was on the LEDs, and made sure that each of the LEDs can be pushed fully into the new lens. And so I've gone around, pushed all of the LEDs back into the lenses, and obviously after testing, I tested the LEDs before stripping them of their old glue and rubber and everything, and I tested them before they went back into the spar, and I just realised I've done a really poor job of covering the... It's already gone off, so I'm going to have to put some more on there. But I've basically gone around, put them all in, and then used silicone sealant all around the, well, pretty much where the sealant was before. So I've completely covered it, and I've also covered the threads of the new lens, so even if that breaks, and how much you tighten these up really is a bit of a question. I tended to do them up finger tight, and then just with a little hex, well, it was a box spanner, just nipped it up slightly so you could just see the little white O-ring compressed slightly on the inside of the spar. So you certainly don't want to over tighten these. Real high quality sealant used. I think I used the Decal 781. It's a medium to high modulus. Modulus just refers to how much it can move, so a low modulus sealant can be stretched quite easily, and a high one not so much. So the control panel is there, and again that has now been finished off with sealant all around the edges. There's absolutely no way any of these can leak, although I'm not happy with that one. I've missed a little bit of the thread there, so I'll just cover that. But I don't think these could possibly leak even if they broke again, which I'm sure they will do in a few years' time. I'll just move around to this side, and yeah, same story, just it's not pretty, but it's not going to leak, that's for sure. And I've just put a little bit inside the lens just to hold the LED in place. I'm sure moisture couldn't possibly have got in there. There should never be any moisture inside here, but it's just sealed it a little bit all the way around. Just got to get rid of these last bits of silicone with a vacuum cleaner. Now that wire, you won't be able to see it, but just where it goes over the back of that pipe is the sensor for the water leak detection system. And again, that is, well, I'll show you on a different video, we'll cover that, but it's basically two round metal sensors either side of a rectangular piece of plastic. So I've put a blob of silicone in the middle and just pushed it into the material, so it's actually sat silicone to that, and then I have just screwed the actual unit to the side. Very, very loud. So I've done one that side, and this one's easier to see. This is where a lot of the corrosion had been going on for ages. Sprayed with ACF 50, as you'll recall, but I have just siliconed that little unit down into there, and that will definitely get wet if this starts to leak. Same story here. I've just got a few little bits of stuff to pick up, and in this case the unit has just been screwed on to the wood there, and that's it. There's a few hot melt bits that have come adrift that have been from, well, whenever they fell off. It's not something I've just knocked off. I'm not going to be bothering to try and stick that back in place. It's really not going to go there and stay there, I wouldn't have thought, very easily. That is the old label that fell off the spar cover panel here, and that's pretty much it. Like I say, it's not pretty, but it doesn't need to be. All I want is a really good seal, and if they break off in the inside again, there's no water coming out through here. So that's it, job done. We've already had it filled up and running, so we know there's no issues, no leaks. Just going to let that sealant go off, and then we'll fill it up, and we'll be good to go, hopefully. Did notice the corrosion on the cover there, so that looks like it unscrews. Sensor screw on that, so we might just replace the three of them. I'm going to get a price when I'm down there picking up the other nozzle that broke, so we're just going to go and get that, and again clean that last bit of water and probably fill it up later on or tomorrow. So just really that last video on the alarm to do, because there's three of them, pack of three, about £21 on Amazon, and when I show you how sensitive it is in a minute, I think it's a worthy addition to the spar. Just thought we'd take a quick look at what I'm doing at the moment. I'm replacing all of the 18 spar lenses, because most of them virtually fell off when they were touched. They just split here, and the LED part just fell off and was hanging in the interior of the spar, and there's nothing sealing that then apart from this silicone on neoprene washer, and the fact that a little bit of water pressure on there holding it in the hole. But you know, one of them was leaking yesterday because it had broken. I was expecting to be able to glue it back on, but I didn't realise quite how this worked. So no, we've gone and bought 18 new ones. That is how the old assembly is when it's snapped and fallen out of the spar. For some reason they've just gone bloody nuts and sealed this end up when there's really no need. The water's going to come in from this way, and the only thing protecting that is the washer, you know, the O-ring here. Why they've had to go berserk and fill this up with silicone, yeah, maybe they were bothered about a leak here then getting into the wiring, but really, yeah, I don't know. So quick way to test these, whether they're working or not. You've got 4 wires, so you've got black, which is positive. I'm just applying USB 5 volt to that, and then you've got red, green and yellow, and so red is red, green is green and yellow is blue light. So I have made up a little header. The bottom pin is 5 volts, and then the top 3 are just shorted out to the negative of the power supply, the little 5 volt power supply. So with the black wire facing down to positive, we can just plug that in, and you will get an approximation of white light. No idea how that's going to show up on the camera. So if that is looking white, then they are all running correctly. The next stage is we've obviously got to get all this apart so the LED can be fed into the lens. And the only way I've found of doing this, and it's pretty mucky, there is, I don't know what they've used, it seems to be a mixture of silicone and something else, because it's still sticky in places. This, I suspect, was a soft rubber grommet, shroud at some point, but it certainly isn't anymore. It's quite a hard plastic. So I'm literally getting in there with some cutters and trying to cut it back. Really doesn't help when everything is so hard like this. So we've got that peeled back. It's going now downwards towards the cable, so we've got to be real careful now. There we go. So that's that shroud off, and then you'll see that they have coated it in. Well, it's definitely silicone, but then this is a very sticky bit down the end, and I've just been trying to run a blade down there and just cut it open a little bit so it can be peeled back. It's almost like it's slightly soft still. So yeah, that's that all peeled off, as you can see. The problem is that same silicone has gone in to the lens with the LED, and it is holding it pretty firm in there. The LED is flush with this broken off bit, and no amount of pull-in will release that. So again, we've got to get in there and cut this plastic, which again seems a bit, you'd think it would shatter as soon as you try to cut it, but it won't. It cuts, but it doesn't shatter, which would be useful if it did, because you could then just free up everything. It might not be shattering because of the silicone that's in there. And at some point, there we go, you will be able to pull this out and discard the old lens. Now you'll probably find, like on this one, there is some silicone that's gone up with it. I don't know whether it's silicone or hot melt. No, it's really hard to say, but So now we just need to trim off any excess of this heat shrink tubing, and the reason for that is if there's any excess, it's very hard to get this to feed up into the new lens. You might find that the pins of the LED are a bit bent, as I've been straightening them out on the ones I've been doing, and then again just cutting away this excess gently. Obviously I've got the gear to repair any of these terminals that should get broken in any of this process. I've done 1, 2, 3, 4. I think this is the 6th one, and I haven't managed to damage one yet. So once that's done, you can just offer it up to the new lens and see how far in that will go. Obviously you'd like to get it up to the top there. In this case it's a bit sticky, and I suspect when we come to do this, once they're in, it's going to be a bit harder, because you'll be pushing the lens out against the resistance of the nut. So maybe just the soapy solution just onto here to ease matters. Let's just try a liquid for the moment, see if that makes things go in any easier. Yeah, so I suspect the easiest way to oh shit, that's alcohol in a cup. The easiest way to get these back in will just be a little smear of SGM 494 silicone grease, and that will slide all the way in, and that will ease things. So yeah, that's what you've got to do. I mean, of course you can go out and buy the whole new lens, LED assembly, but I don't think they've got 18 in stock, and I frankly didn't want to waste £5 a piece or £5 or £6 a piece when I've got perfectly serviceable ones. And so that's why I'm doing this one by one. We'll then go and put all the lenses in with just a little smear of silicone grease, tighten them up, and then put these wires back in, and then we'll be good to go. So yeah, hope that helps. Black wire, positive, other 3 are the colours, so put negative to the red, green or yellow wires, or all 3 together as I've done here, just by shorting the 3 pins out, and then the 5V is on the other side. So yeah, hope that helps. Hey guys, right, just wanted to finish off this spa video with a look at the 3 water leak alarms that I've purchased. Box of 3, and comes with 9V batteries, screws to fix it to the wall, etc., or whatever you've got to fix it to. And Amazon, about £21 I think it was, you know, £7 each, ridiculous price. I wish I'd known about these things years ago. So that's the basic module, sensors at the bottom, and there is a 9V battery supplied, which will just fit if we can get it undone. Come on, how hard can it be? My fingers are, skin's all dried out from working on this bloody spar for the last week. Can't grip a thing. Right. Oh, come on. There we go. Short self-test routine as you plug the battery in, which is good, so you know it's actually working. There is a low battery alarm, and it will bleep every 60 seconds if the battery is low. The operating temperature is 0 degrees C to 49 degrees C, so no issues with using this inside the hot tub cavity. It'll be absolutely fine. The alarm, if it goes off, can last up to 72 hours, so if you haven't heard it by then, well, there's a problem. Now that is it, that is ready to go. You can just simply place that on the floor if you want. How sensitive is it? Well, let me just wet my finger. Actually, my skin's so dry. And that is just a little moisture on my finger. And it's absolutely perfect. Now it does say 100 decibels, 120 decibels at 0 meters. I've got a meter to check that, but it doesn't sound anywhere near that loud. But I think you would easily hear that, even if you're in the house. That hopefully we'll find out when the spar. Well, actually, we won't find out when the spar covers are back on, because it hopefully won't ever have a leak. I might just put all of the covers, 3 of the covers back on, and yeah, well, you know what, sod it. Yeah, I'll leave this inside, put 3 covers on, rest the 4th back up there, leave the sensor hanging out, and just wet it and see what noise comes out of the spar. The spar's got a couple of vent holes, so hopefully that will allow the sound to come out. Now the other thing which I have utilised is these sensors can actually come out on a length of wire. So in my case, I have just applied a little bit of silicone to this central piece, and I have stuck it down onto a couple of low points in the spar. So 2 of the points where the water was pooling the most, that obviously the water runs to first, have now got a sensor in each. Same thing, wet finger. It's barely wet, I mean there's absolutely nothing on there, it's just a bit of moisture. Now that's absolutely perfect, so very pleased with that, and I would recommend every spar owner gets one of these. The other thing you could do, actually you could use this for, is I don't know whether any of you have ever overfilled the spar slightly when you're filling it up, but if you just get a little rubber sucker and glue it to the back here, or in fact I suppose you could just hang the wire over the over the spar to where the water level needs to be, and carry on filling until the alarm goes off. Another quite useful function for this, yeah, water level indicator. Probably give that a go at some point as well. But at that price, £21 I think it was. It might have been plus VAT. I got it on the business account, so but whatever, £8 each, something like that. Absolute must. And we're kind of done, I think. That really is the last stage. The spar will be filled up later or tomorrow once all the silicone has fully gone off, and hopefully it will now last for a few more years. I would say that out of sight, out of mind has played a major function in this little saga. It's very easy to keep the exterior of the spar looking brand new, but unless you're looking inside, you've got absolutely no idea what is going on inside the spar. So I would really suggest, if you've got a spar, any make of spar, get it inspected once every 6 months or 12 months, especially when it's under warranty. If we'd had this inspected at 12 months and then 24 months just before the warranty expires, it would have been obvious that those wet ends were leaking. Certainly the main twin speed one was leaking under warranty, absolutely no question about that. That would have all been replaced free of charge, and I wouldn't have spent the last week buggering up my fingers and cuts and bruises and everything else trying to work on this spar. So get them out, get the installers to come out, check it over, check yourself. If you can see any powdery residues anywhere near those pumps or anywhere else, you've got a leak. Even a few drips will leave a residue. So get it inspected. Don't just trust chance. Fortunately, this has not cost me too dearly. The seal kits were about $18.50 each, ready available online. The panel, well, that was just bad luck that it was all peeling off, and I'm still going to try and save that just in case we need to change it again. Just looking for an acetate sheet to use, cut to size, glue back down, and we'll cover that on a different video. So yeah, I'm rambling on as usual. Just get it inspected. I was talking about costs, wasn't I? So yeah, $18.50 for each seal kit. A couple of nozzles. They've been very kind, of giving us a few free bits and pieces. I've got to go down there now to pick up the last nozzle that's broken. I'm hoping they're not all going to drop like flies now, one by one. They're not even turned, they're never used, so they've only just got to sit there. Unfortunately, the water pressure has blown out the one that's broken now. The control panel itself was 150 quid. It's a Balboa labelled one, but it's a nicer label than the Myline Spa one. Functionality is exactly the same as a TP600 system, so that was the most expensive part, but at least I've now seen how the gaskets go on, what gaskets are used, and I can get that off now more easily, having seen how to do it the first time, and probably replace any gaskets that have absorbed the water and it's gone all spongy. So yeah, look, anyway, I'm done. Hope some of that was useful, and as usual, it's just me rambling on. Not all of it is correct at the time of videoing. I tend to just come out with what I'm thinking at the time, and if it's incorrect, we'll correct it as we go along. But that is how most people will work on something and research things. There's no little point in me coming up with a polished, finished video saying do this, and this. I like actually to see all the faults, cock-ups and mistakes and wrong assumptions that can be made, as long as the outcome is that everything is repaired, working and safe and good again. So yep, there we go. Hope that was useful. So finally got it all clean, and we've used 303 on all the side panels and the cover lifter. So from the outside it all looks as good as new. The LEDs all in and working. 2 leak detectors installed, levels correct, and that's pretty much it. New control panel. At least we know now how that is held in place with the 3M tape. Hopefully that will last a few more years. We're going to attempt to repair the other one, so let's run through the costs. The wet end bearing, seal kits were $18.50 each. This was the main expense because the other one, this decal, was coming off, but it took the acetate strip off underneath it when it was pulled off. It was hanging off one end anyway. So yeah, $150 for that. A couple of weeks ago we changed the pillows, and they were about £100 or so. What else have we used? Well, a tube of Dow Corning, I think I used 781. It's a medium to high modulus silicon, and we've used some ACF 50 on anything that looked remotely corroded on the inside, including the twin speed motor spindle, and yeah, various bits and pieces. I think we bought some 3M tape and some VBM tape, which is the other stuff. The 3M, is it 461 or 481 tape is used on this to secure the decal and the acetate. That is the same as mobile phones use, and the VBM double-sided 3M tape is what secures the whole housing to the spar. So we've got a sheet of each. Yes, of course, we've replaced every single LED lens, about £1.10 I think each lens. The LED with the cable and connector is available, and they're about £5 to £6 I believe, but I decided to take out every single LED, get rid of all the glue, hot melt, silicone and the virtually solid rubber grommet that had been put around all of the LEDs, and clean it all up enough so I could just push each LED assembly into the new lenses. And they've been done up with the little plastic nuts they come with. They also come with the white O-ring, finger tight and then a little bit extra. And I have used the 781 sealant on the back to completely cover the nut and the spar and the thread, so even if one of these breaks in the future, it should not leak, hopefully. I suppose the worst that could happen is the water will get into the LED and destroy it, but it certainly won't be leaking out of the back into the spar. So if an LED goes out, then we know that one of these is cracked and the LED has the 4 terminals have corroded and failed. So yeah, that was it. Just, well, what are we, 3 years 4 months I think nearly since we purchased it, and yeah, I mean, it's as good as new again now. It should be good for another few years hopefully before the next thing goes wrong, or at least hopefully these new pump seals will be as good or hopefully better than the originals. There obviously was a quality issue with the originals, that seems to be well known, and in fact the only real issue I had was the fact that I was originally told that it was going to need 2 new motors and housings complete, because this spar maker doesn't supply any spares. If I'd just been told all you need is a couple of seal kits, it would have avoided an awful lot of aggro and to-in and fro-in with the shop. But it was all resolved amicably in the end, and we're quite happy. I don't mind spending a little bit of money out on a spar that's 3 and a bit years old. We've also got the 2 alarms inside the spar base. Basically one is at the bottom down there and the other one is at the bottom right down there. They seem to be the 2 lowest points where the water pooled when it was leaking from the motors. So if alarm goes off, we've got a leak. The 3rd alarm that came in the pack of 3 I now use to just clip onto the filter housing at the right level, and I can just leave it to fill up. As soon as the alarm goes off, I know we're at the right level, and that saves me having to come backwards and forwards every 15 minutes checking on the water level. So yeah, good idea, the alarm, the water alarms. I think I'd recommend them to anybody, but as I said before, just to end this video, I'm going to say it again, just get your spar inspected every year, at least every year. If you're competent, then pop one of the covers off and just have a look for any of the residue that we could clearly see on this one. But for God's sake, make sure the spar is isolated before you do anything. Pull the fuse at the fuse box, turn the fuse off at the fuse box if that's the sort of fuse you've got, turn it off at the isolator and padlock the isolator in the off position. And if you're really not sure what I'm talking about, then get a professional in to do the work for you. So yeah, that's it, all done. Hope some of that was useful to somebody.